And we really appreciate that you've waited for Family Check. Thank you so much for being that patient since we began the show until now. So now we begin that conversation that I told you we'll be having today as we talk about the youth and culture today on Family Check. This morning we are going to look at all the issues that concern the young people, looking at the now generation vis-a-vis the then generation, and even looking at how we are going to bridge the gap between these two generations. A lot of issues have come out and a lot of issues need to be discussed at such sittings, and this is what we will be doing in the course of this conversation. Of course, I'll not be doing this alone. I'm joined by a panel of three, and it's all gentlemen. I'm the only lady in studio this morning. Feeling all nice about it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. You'll allow me to introduce my panel. I'll begin with Fred Abok. He's a family coach, a life coach as well. He has been with us every day, every day. We call him the resident family counselor. Thank you so much for joining us once again. So yes, and today, for the very first time on the show, we are joined by Bill, Ndindi, and Simon Andiki. Yes, both mentors, and they work on a day-to-day basis with the young people. And I feel like I should give them this opportunity because it's your very first time to praise yourself for us. You know, Kenyans are watching. Tell us a bit about yourself. Let me start with you, Bill.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Bill Ndindi. I work with an organization called Life Ministry Kenya. I'm currently in charge of our youth and young people outreach engagement department. So we focus on connecting with these guys, finding them where they are, and helping them make sense of life, helping them understand, you know, what is life about, what choices do I need to make. We mostly do this in institutions of learning. So we have a team that works with high school, we have a team that works with university students. Yeah.
I like meet them where they are, go to where the young people are, go to their level, go to their spaces, have conversations with them where they are, and help them make sense of life.
Yes.
I like what you do.
Thank you.
Envy your job. But anyway, Simon, tell us a bit about what you do as well.
Yeah, first of all, it's a privilege and an honor to be here on this discussion. I am a husband and a father.
Wow.
I must be able to say that first. Bill is my colleague. I work with young people, but directly through the church. And it's a wonderful privilege just trying to help shape the future of our nation and our society through the young people. The main focus is just to be able to raise leaders who can be able to raise other leaders wherever they are. And it's a wonderful privilege, you know, serving among the young people.
The young people.
Yes, yes.
Indeed, and today this conversation is specifically for the young people, being done by the young people themselves and also representing the older generation. I'm not saying you're old, Fred, but we just needed a voice of reason in this conversation.
Pretty smart, right? Where you put me there where I belong.
Yes, but I know you wear many hats, Fred.
Sure.
You work with a lot of people in the society and young people as well. At some point you interact with them, and you're also a mentor to a lot of young people in the society. To begin this conversation, what do you think are some of the things that you have to change? Like, I know when you're dealing with a young person and an old person, there is something you have to change. For us to understand the psychology of a young person, from where you sit, what is it all about? What does the mind of a young person look like?
Great. Thank you so much, Serfine, this morning. To be able to briefly get onto the base of this is actually the mind of a young person engaged on a lot of dynamic based on the cultural systems and dynamics, but also based on the environment where they are. But of course, young people have actually been able to adopt into several things because at the current life, there are a lot of sources of information, but also a lot of engagements and opportunities for them to be able to think in a diverse way rather than the mainstream, I believe, liberal kind of a way that the older generation were thinking about. So this is affected on by early exposure to different elements of life, but also a constant engagement with issues and fundamental things that both the older generation and the young generation are wired to, like issues of technology, issues of just the basic Western and African coexistence of culture. So it is an upbeat but also entrench in a wide concentration. Yes.
Okay. I like how you've compared these two generations, and these are the generations that have been at conflict for a very long time. There's the old reasoning, there's the new reasoning, and a lot of people have been complaining about this issue of generational gap. We'll talk about that in the course of this conversation. But let me come to you, Bill and Simon. Currently, you're working with young people on a day-to-day basis. This is what you do full-time. You go to institutions, you have conversations with them one-on-one, in groups, and in different ways, the way you do them. What would you say are the topmost issues, you know, affecting the youth today? When we talk about the youth and culture, what would you say are those aspects of our culture that relate to the young people, things that are very, you know, very priority right now, things that we need to address when you're having topics like the youth and culture?
Okay. So I spend a lot of time with young people in institutions of learning. And my specific bias is college and university students. And we all know that this is one space where lots of worldviews are shaped.
Yeah.
This is a space where people get really to be formed into who they eventually become. And so, yes, I do interact with young people who are at that stage where they're asking critical questions about life. So I would say some of the pertinent issues in this conversation would include the whole question of worldview, for example. Just saying what informs the choices, the interests that a young person gets to adopt for himself. And talking worldview, this is where issues like music would come in, you know, things that feed into the system that ends up forming the software that runs a person's life.
Wow.
So you realize that there's a lot of influence that is coming in through music. Television and the kind of stuff that you do here, you know, the movies you show, all these are things that end up shaping the worldviews of our young people. But there are also issues to do with just modernity vis-a-vis the traditional, more conservative way of doing things. All these young people come from families, and you notice that most of these parents are from a certain generation.
All right.
And these young people are from a certain generation, and there are lots of differences between these particular generations. It's amazing how much difference a 10-year gap would make. For example, I am in my early 30s now, and when I spend time with guys in their early 20s now, there's a world of difference between us.
You're lying to us.
No, I'm serious.
Early
I'm serious.
30s.
I'm in my early 30s.
Chakula huwa inaenda wapi? But it's okay.
Magoti. Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, just saying the gaps, the difference between these generations. Again, there are certain pertinent conversations that need to be had regarding that, because the parents can no longer speak into the lives of most of these young people. That responsibility of parenting has largely been abdicated, to say the least, to most of these other platforms, like I mentioned, that form their worldviews. So I think that's probably another very critical aspect of this conversation.
Okay, parents also feel they cannot understand the young people.
Yes.
The young people feel we cannot understand the parents. They do not understand us as well. So there is just that gap that is in between there. Simon, he's talked about conversations that we need to be having. Personally, what do you think are these conversations? To add on what he has just shared with us, what are the things that you feel going forward, these are the things we should be discussing with our young people, and why?
Before I respond to that question, it would also be important to just understand what culture would entail. And I think it entails about three things. It's about ideas, about customs, and social behavior. And the youth culture today has been affected in a very great way. I can't really say the Kenyan youth today, you would say they have their personal, unique identity based on the fact that the world has become a global village, the digital platform. And I think the conversations that we need to begin to discuss is what will really define us as a people. What would be that idea or a custom or a social behavior that can define us as a particular people in a particular area. And I think the discussion should be, especially in connection with worldview, as Bill has said, I think culture has been affected in one or two ways. or it has been attacked from all fronts. Number one, the family culture has been attacked differently. Even the definition of a family today is very different.
Yeah.
And that gap is there. When we look at the issues of faith, the faith has been affected. I think Bill, if he gets more chance to talk, and this is something that I've also experienced, young people are struggling with the questions of faith. Does it really make sense to us? So those are discussions that also we need to discuss in matters of faith, in matters of what a family should clearly be, but also in terms of leadership, in terms of, because some of this culture is caught. It's better caught than taught. And young people are looking, they learn quickly by what they watch. You talk of music, you talk of the movies, but also the leadership that is there, whether through the, who do we call them? Celebrities, or even political leaders, you know. And so these discussions in the area of family, in the area of faith, in the area of leadership, what example are they getting exactly from the nation as a whole that is defining their culture today, and that can remain unique as a Kenyan culture that they can stand with, irrespective of what the digital platform is bringing. Yes.
And earlier we were having a conversation and you brought in something very interesting, the digital culture, something that we may want to ignore, but it's something that is so real today. We have this sort of digital culture where the youth are drawing. Culture is supposed to identify who we are, you know, tell us what we do, how we do them, like how our way of life ought to be. And right now the young people are getting answers to those questions online. That is what we are calling the digital culture. It has pros and cons, and we'll talk about them. But then, Fred, there was the culture that was before.
Yes.
Every community work on a culture yao, yeah? And right now there's that shift towards this direction that the gentlemen are sharing with me this morning. What do you think has contributed to that journey? And is it a positive journey or a negative journey from where you sit? Compare these two cultures, the olden culture and the one we have now.
You know, Serfine, one thing that we can actually not stop is the world from rotating. And as the world rotates, as long as it's day and night, things got to change. So change is paramount. So it's not about whether you got to adapt onto the culture or not. It's actually inevitable and essential that we got to adapt to the new culture. So it is intentional for parents to get to understand the cultural systems, the dynamics of today, and adapt onto it. Because you know what? If we align ourselves to the old system, then we'll have a great disconnect with the young people. And the young people are our children. The young people are our future leaders. They're our future society. That we need to actually be in touch with them as we align them into what is inevitable, but also be up to date and current with what they are going through.
Before you continue, I'm getting a very fundamental point that I want to come out very clearly. You're saying the older generation should step up to the current times. The things that are happening now. This issue of mini mzee, Facebook ni ya watoto, I don't have anything to go look online, Twitter ni ya slay queens and the young people. This thing is not working. Parents should actually be part of what is going on. Is that what you're saying?
Very true. You know, and sometimes I find the parents are not candid with life. In that, how you appreciate a telephone, a mobile phone, yet you're saying that I cannot get to the internet. You know, Facebook is something that I cannot find on my cell phone. Why are you making calls in the first place? Why can't you still go to the booth and be able to make on that call? You know, we need to be candid with life. And you know, I said here on this program that if we are not intentional about adopting and aligning ourselves to the young people, the society will align them onto where they ought to go. And you know what? You have a greater privilege to be able to be up to date, align your young people into where you desire them to go. Because on the old age, the old people could actually be able to bring young people and talk to them about sex. Today, they can Google about sex. Are we getting one another? So instead of allowing them to Google about sex, why can't you be able to discuss it?
And on Google, by the way, there is an answer to every question. 7 ways to.
Yes.
8 ways to,
Yes.
13 ways to.
Yes.
Like anything, just think about anything. Right now, you Google.
So it is inevitable. Up your game and, fix
Yeah.
up the thing
Yeah,
before,
true,
it
true.
fixes you up. And, a lot of parents are actually fixed up today, instead of actually fixing on the issue. And, young people are trying on all manner of things, from dressing, to faith, to issues of adopting onto under kind of a lineage. And parents are watching on and they are helpless. Why? Because they have actually deliberately ignored the opportunity to step up.
But Serfine, allow me to just play the devil's advocate for a minute.
All right, go ahead.
Frankly, looking at things from the parents' side, I think is also important.
Yeah.
Think about it. The dynamism, he said the world is changing and it's moving really fast. That's true. And the pace of change is amazing. It's neck-breaking.
Yeah.
What is trending today, in 10 minutes, is not trending anymore.
It's true.
Someone said the Olympics motto is faster, higher, stronger. So there's constant change, and that seems to be the spirit of our age. Dynamism, we are always improving, we are always growing. So as you look at that reality and that culture shaped in that way, and the fact that for parents, many of them, their energies are diminishing, there are all these responsibilities on them.
Really?
Trying to
Is that
meet and
really
catch up.
like a valid
it's true.
reason to stay back and let things happen?
I must say,
like
staying back,
it's too fast. They're
staying
changing.
back
Let
and
me
letting
just
things happen is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And that is why we all are advocating that parents truly need to step up. But I think the flip side of it also is that things are changing pretty fast, and their energies are not,
Very true.
concomitant.
As much as they're changing, but they're basics, They are basics. And what I'm finding that is not really on candid is when you adopt onto one and then you boycott one. If you do not want to get into the Facebook, you don't want to get into the Twitter, you don't want to get into
Twitter.
what is...
It's Twitter.
Twitter, all right.
You see?
I'm one of the old guys, I'm not in the swag. But what I'm saying, then why can't you maintain the booth? Are you getting it?
It's
Instead of,
Twitter.
why do you love M-Pesa in the first place?
Yes.
M-Pesa is so convenient because technology has actually adapted on also there.
Yeah.
Then why can't you be able to get on more informed and get onto this?
Yeah.
And just basically so that we can be able to align. Because our young people are at risk of adopting into some cultural system, especially the Western cultural system, that cannot be able to adapt. So I think today, you are actually getting a young man who's graduated from the university and you're responsible, and this guy want to go to an interview with a Mohawk and want to prove to you that you know what, this is who I am, and you got to give me a responsibility for your company.
Yeah.
You look at the young man and the way he's sagging on his trousers and you say, this one is a dangerous species to my organization.
Okay. Simon,
I
as
wanted,
you add on to
yes,
that,
yes.
how do we make this work? What Fred is sharing and what Bill, they're being so real about it, and this is what is happening, yeah? How do we make that work? Because we all desire to go to that space where the youth and the older generation can compromise and meet somewhere in the middle so that we bridge that gap. How do we make it work when it's moving too fast and these other ones are feeling like, you are staying behind, you are so, past tense.
Yes.
How do we make this
We
relationship
must accept
work?
the reality. We must accept the reality that change is here and is inevitable. Recently, I attended a church in Nairobi, and one of the leaders who was leading the service was reading a text that involves the congregation. And I was surprised that this leader told people you should not even open your phones because that is not okay. And a majority of the people there were ready to open their scriptures from their phone.
Yeah.
And iPads.
And yes, and I was surprised that congregation, the young people are very few. Why is that? You see, the leadership itself has a problem to change and adopt to what is happening. Look at the big organizations and corporations. What have they done? They have targeted the young people and they're on the digital platform. Why? Because you see, if you see at the population of Kenya, actually under 24 years, we have about 60% of the Kenyan population currently under 24 years. If we do not begin to shape ourselves to speak to that generation, I'm telling you, we are in real trouble. So we have to accept the reality that change is here, and also culture is dynamic. It is moving from analog, it has moved fully to digital. Even the Kenyan, like look at the way when we were moving from the analog set to the digital set. Like somebody like me, I had trouble. I was like wondering how will this work? But I thank God that even the policies pushed us to the point that we are where we are today, and we are enjoying the digital platform. And so we would have to come to the point where, in as much as we're saying we are old and we cannot change with the pace, as Bill is saying, but there is no way you can speak to a young person today unless you are able to speak to them in a language that they understand. And therefore we have to change with the times, or else we will lose this whole generation and we will be left behind. Aqua Flintstones.
Stone Age.
Stone Age.
You know, this thing is it just one way, or there is something valuable, there is a gem in the old culture, something that we shouldn't lose? Because we look at these things happening and you hear wazazi saying, vijana wa siku hizi wamepotoka. It's like there is something about how they used to do their things that they feel if the youth of today understood, most problems would be solved. I don't know. Any of you can throw in something about this. Is there something beautiful
before Bill played the
about
advocate,
that culture?
allow me to
very much.
Because I'll give you an example. Even when on matters relationship, you find it very hard for a young person to really take the advice of an old person. It's very beautiful. It's crafted in a very good way. You should do this. You should do that. But then with the current times, it will not work. The way you used to do things then will not work now. I don't know if there is still something beautiful about the old culture that we need to hold on to, something that will bring an answer to the problems we are facing today with the young people.
Very true.
Yeah.
I 100% agree that there are a lot of gems that we actually still hold on.
Which gems? Yeah.
You know, like, you know what, like the process of marriage, you know, getting on to know a lady or getting to know a young man on a process. Today is a love on the first sight. And, you know, the days we used to actually, you know, ladies used to dress to church like they're helping city council to wipe the streets and cover on their head. You know, was helping on them to, you know, be composed. And, you know, you don't get married for the first sight. The beauty. Today they are exposed. Even, you know, some of them dress until when the devil sees them, they say, the devil tells them, you know what, you don't belong to our camp. In fact, we don't know you. You are on your own. And,
One
you know,
would argue,
when
one would argue that, you know, the men of that time, the way the women and the men were brought up, it was like, it was to gel very well. A man would see dignity and respect, and that lady who has kept herself, she's polite, and that is what to them then they saw a wife in that. Today, people want independent, free, happy, moving, go-getter kind of girl. And society has brought us with a lot of things like what you're sharing, the movies. What the young people see as sellable today would not be sellable then, you know. So in as much as you may take us back to those days of, I don't know if it would work now. Just say,
allow me to say this. You know, are people without the knowledge of their history, it's a lost people. It's like a tree without roots. And we cannot like do away with that older generation. Old is gold. That one we have to affirm, because your history informs your present for the sake of your future. And therefore we cannot like say we do away with the older generation. They have gone before us and they know what works. But the reality is there are some things that worked for them then that probably may not work for them today. My father would write love letters to my mom and it would take time for it to get there. But today, an SMS, meeting would be so easy. You take an Uber, you go meet somebody, even if it is in Nakuru. You finish what you are doing, you come back. So that you would find that technology and the way of doing things are working differently, and it cannot be in the same manner like before. But we cannot ignore the history of where we are coming from, because that has to inform today as we move forward to the next future.
And long ago, people taking a photograph as a couple was a date. You could go out to take a photo. Nowadays, people can take selfies everywhere. It's no longer that much of a big deal. Things have changed. How things are working have changed. But we are all agreeing that there are certain gems that we need to hold on to. The young people need to come down to that level where they let the older generation speak to them about these gems that they need to hold on to. But how do we make that work? I'm still asking. I want to
propose an approach that probably would help bridge this divide and just bring these two generations together. some sort of operational framework. But before that, allow me to also present an argument that I think there's, the point I was driving at while talking about the pace of change is that many times as we complain about the adoption of Western culture and the Western culture running our systems here, that argument, when we go ahead and try to force, for example, the older generation to therefore embrace all this dynamism and get on with it, gets us to lose something. Because if the old are the ones adapting and flowing along with what the younger generation and what runs
channeling.
Yes. Something is lost of the past. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Old truly is gold. There's serious gems in how people used to run things in the past. And we need not lose that. The African context and the way things were done in Africa is that change was some sort of a continuum. Okay, it was not something that would happen immediately. That's why the way people would learn professions, for example, was through apprenticeship, where an older person takes a younger person, and together over the period of time,
Yeah. So
something is
coaching
learned.
process.
So coaching and mentorship and journeying alongside someone for a lengthy period of time. Today, young people cannot keep a profession because they can't listen to anyone, you know. They run the world. Their systems are the ones running the world. They're the ones who are teaching us how to use computers and all that. And so there's this sense of
Why
cultural
are you saying us as if you're so,
superiority.
you know, it's like
Yeah.
taking that seat of wisdom and saying,
But
young people are teaching us.
I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Changes in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
this is what I propose as
Yeah.
a solution. I think if we intentionally adopted principles, but were willing to adapt the methods,
Okay.
there could be a reconciliation
All right.
of these two ways of doing things. So that we adopt principles, like say, in the African culture, we say, we want people to grow into professions. We want people to learn from both what is coming in and what was of, you know, the days gone by. So that change is not something that just lands. It's adopted through a system. And then in terms of the specific methods of how this will work, these are methods that we can adapt. Yeah?
Wow.
We can take up mobile phones, which are very helpful, but adopt some principles and still maintain those principles.
In fact, there's an African proverb that says, what a young man can see
standing.
standing,
An
old man can
see
see
seated.
sitting down.
What an old man can see while seated, a young man cannot
Have
see
to
even while standing.
Step on the shoulder to be able to see.
Yeah, I like that aspect of the conversation. But then, you know, there is one thing about the young people that most of them you'd hear them complain about, is that they're not being given opportunities to explore what they want to explore, you know, to go to the boundaries that they want to go. It's like the old people feel they are right, their way is okay, it is the safest, it is the best, it is what has always been working. And the young people feel like they're being curtailed into that. I don't know if it is important, Fred, for the old people also, the older generation, let me correct myself,
Yes.
to get to a space where they can take the risk with the young people, like allow them be who they are, do what they want to do, you know, learn on their own and get to be who
Three
they want to
fundamental
be.
things here are coming into play. I think there's need for the older generation to accept that things are changing. Accepting does not necessarily giving in to the situation. When you accept, you will be able to adjust. There are things that need to be adjusted. You know, we used to have dinner on one dinner table. And these guys of late get in the kitchen, pick up their food and go eat in the bedroom. You know, when you begin to build up an issue about that, there will be a lot of tension in the house.
Yeah.
So there's need for a little bit of adjustment. You know, there are things which are adjustable. And then it brings us on to be able to advance. Now, advance is getting on to understand, to be understood. And on this conversation, you will be able to empty some cups by, you know, bringing down some mentalities and thoughts and beliefs that you have actually put on your mindset that this is the way things got to be done. But still upholding on some values that are inevitable. Because I believe that, like, values of marriage still need to be held up. You know, you need to get to know who you're marrying, the background of the person you're marrying, the faith that they have, and the community that they come from. Because, you know, some of these things define who a person is. And so those are some of great values. And so much, even as you're advancing, we still can be able to maintain these values.
Yeah, true. And if you, I like that example. If you look at how marriage was really done back in the day, the process you go through before you get a wife or a husband, you would think about that before you think of a divorce, because that process was thorough. Things were checked, and everything was done in an organized way. The rates of divorce would not be as much as they are now. Today, marriage has been cheapened. It's become so easy. It's become trial and error. Let me step in, try. If it doesn't work out, we can walk our ways. And some people even have that agreement prior. Like, we try. If it doesn't work, we go our way, and we see what is happening with the increasing rates of divorce.
So the solemnness of it is actually distorted. And you know, now there is no really much value of life, because if the beginning of it is a distortion, then undertaking it on to maximize all the process is actually a confusing.
You know, the truth is, if you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything.
Yes.
Wow.
And one of the renowned writers in Africa, Chinua Achebe, he said, if the center does not hold, then things will fall apart. So I'm in agreement with Fred and Bill that we have to have that principle thing that we have to stand with and say, going forward, this is like a no negotiation. It's like what our leaders would say, zero
Tolerance.
minimum. These are the irreducible minimum. So
Robert,
that basic foundation has to be really there, so that we don't just say we are working on a vacuum and adopting everything and moving with it. We have to have one area that holds truly. And that is where I would even want us, if in another discussion, on the area of faith, because you see, the godly principles can never change. If a child is to obey the parent, a husband is to love, a wife is to submit, when these principles remain, then therefore we can say we are building towards something that is a firm foundation, so that we also don't do away with where we are coming from. Yes.
So in as much as we're trying to bridge this gap, there is the importance to make sure that there is that irreducible minimum.
Yes.
There are the principles that guide society. These are the things that both the old and the young need to observe. Like, we meet at the center, and nothing changes there. We all in harmony at that point. Let's talk about mentorship. In this journey of mentorship, you speak to the young people, you mentor them. Even parents, this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. But then you have to agree with me, it gets to a point in the life of a young person, they feel like they know what they are supposed to be doing. I am an adult, for crying out loud. I know the kind of decisions I need to make. Like, what stages, in what stages are you supposed to go? Like, Fred, at what point do you need to take the coaching role and sit back and let the young person fly? And, you know.
I think I would rather allow Bill to build on that, then I can actually be able to make it on later. Because different stages have different understanding and openness. You discover that, you know, the response that you'll actually be able to get on the age of 10 to 15 years is different from 16 years to 20, and very much different from the 20s to the 30s that we had above.
Okay.
I think coaching,
as we bring this to a close, unfortunately.
I think coaching and mentorship, again, needs to be wholesome, okay? We need to appreciate that there are values in the generation. So there should be intragenerational mentorship and coaching. We need to have peer mentors. Young people need to be able to sit with each other and chanua each other, okay? But we also need to have that intergenerational mentorship, where we are saying the older are mentoring and coaching the younger, but in certain ways, the younger are also, in a sense, mentoring the old, for example, with the issues of technology and all. So I think just a wholesome perspective that says everyone is a player, everyone has a seat at the table, and everyone has a contribution to make becomes critical.
You need the mentorship at every stage. There's no point in your life you say, now I know. Who are you to tell me?
Someone say when you stop learning, you stop living.
Okay, okay, Simon. You get the chance to give us the final word on behalf of the whole group.
Oh, thank you. What a privilege. The reality is this, the same way that you've asked the question, there are so many people who criticize young people. It's like a young person is guilty unless proven guilty. But I think what we need to do going forward, even in matters of culture, coaching, and mentorship, is that we need less of critics and more of mentors and role models. I think so, at some point, the young people may refuse to listen based on the fact that the other people who are talking to them are not also examples.
Yeah.
Because the question would be, what moral standing do you have to speak to me on this subject?
Wow, I like that.
So I would really say that going forward, that would be something that we would need to talk about and value the importance of every person in every way, even as we coach and as we mentor and as we work together in building a culture that is worth emulating.
Thank you so
even
much.
in the rest of the world.
Thank you so much for that. And on that note, that is where we put a comma. We say we never finish. If we finish, something is wrong. These are the conversations we have every Monday. We never complete. We just talk and hope that wherever you're watching us from, you've gotten your part of the conversation. It's going to impact your life in a way. My name is Serfine Achieng. We meet again for Family Check next Monday. But tomorrow, bright and early, another edition of Good Morning Kenya. Health and women at the forefront will be coming your way. It's a show like no other. Join us then. But for now, it's a wrap from us, the Good Morning Kenya team. It's been a pleasure bringing this program to you this morning. Keep watching KBC Channel 1. There is more that we have lined up for you.